All right, it is 10:03 a.m. on Friday, April 14th, 2023. I call this special session of the Commissioner's Court of Wichita County to order. Up first on the agenda today is a presentation from Dr. Dusty Johnston, President of Vernon College, on the branch campus maintenance tax. Dr. Johnston,
My turn.
come on up. We'll get you
Start off today. Boy,
started off
catch
with
you
us.
guys while you're fresh. I've got to know y'all over the years, and good or bad, you've got to know me. But I want to start with some prepared comments, and I don't want to. I thought, well, these guys are going to think, why is a college president using prepared comments? And they're very short, but there's two reasons why I use prepared comments in nearly every presentation I get, and one of them is I don't want to leave anything out that's important. You ever get back home 30 minutes later and you say, man, I wish I'd have said that. So I use prepared comments. The second one is just as important. You get back home and you say, I wished I hadn't said that. Because you start talking off the cuff sometimes.
But
it
it
just
sure
starts,
felt good.
it starts
Yeah.
flowing out.
Yeah.
You say, man, I wish I hadn't said. We'll see what happens tomorrow morning when I get to work, because I know it's going to catch up to me. So I have some opening comments. Then I hope this is the start of a good discussion. I hope it's the first of several discussions over the summer. But if you don't mind, I will go with my prepared comments. First of all, thanks for your time. Appreciate the opportunity. I know we've talked in the past. I know I've talked with each one of you individually, and you kind of know a little bit what I'm up to, but I want to share specifically some information. I'm very fortunate to be the president of Vernon College. I'm in my 14th year. It's flown by. I've had a good time, and I've been very fortunate to have really good support and board members in both Wichita County, Wilbur County, and the other 10 counties that we serve. But I may be the president, but I represent a 7-person elected board of trustees that is very aware that I'm here today, and they're very supportive of the comments that we're going to discuss and that I'm going to make. I also represent a 7-person steering committee made of Wichita County residents that helped us in the summer of 2019, which seemed like a long time ago, but we developed a feasibility study, which we then submitted to the Texas Higher Education Authority Board, which is part of the process that we have to go through. And they helped us. They put it together. They put their stamp of approval on it. They put their name on it. We submitted it, and then it was approved in January of 2020. And I want to take a second out of these remarks to say, and then we know what happened in March of 2020. You know, we had the COVID. All of a sudden, COVID appeared. And in case y'all didn't know, it went away this week, officially. And then that created some stress. And then in the gentleman's agreement, we sat back and said, with our partners with WFISD, they were pursuing some significant bonds. And we just didn't want to get involved in that conversation or get in the way of that conversation. And that took them some time. Next thing you know, it's the summer of 22, and it just wasn't a good time. And then I visited with you guys, and we decided that due to some other tax issues in the county, that we would probably even push this off a little bit further. Well, here we are, and here I am today. But I also represent about 220 Vernon College employees, about half which live in Wichita County. I mean, our significant operation is down on Maplewood Street. But more importantly, I represent the students that choose Vernon College. And on any given semester, 66% of those students have a Wichita County zip code. They live here. They're from here. They're what we call place bound. They didn't come from anywhere. They're not going anywhere. They live here. They have families here. They work here. And they're choosing education or training to try to get that next step ahead.
And
so,
Dusty,
yes.
just on that number that you mentioned, those other numbers, but that student body makes up what number of a whole? 65% of what?
Yeah,
number?
great question. And I brought some information because I had a feeling we get some good questions later. Pre-COVID, we were running about 2,900 students.
Okay.
We were at a high right after in 2009 and 10, after the depression of 2008, the economic downturn. We got up to 31, 82, 62, okay, something like that. But then in the nation and in the state and in Vernon College, we've had 6 semesters in a row of declining enrollment, so we're now about 2,250, 2,300 students on a given semester. And so of that 2,300 students, 66% of them still have a Wichita County zip code. We keep that piece of data all the time. Just throw out a statistic to kind of back that one up, and it is one of the few statistics I use because I know it's accurate and true, is if you compare fall 2019 to fall 2021, in the United States, there were 1 million less students in higher education. They disappeared during the COVID year. Now, some people want to blame COVID. I blame many variables, not just COVID. And so, just one of the pieces of information I brought is of the 50 community colleges in Texas, 24 suffered a 15% or more decline during that same 3-year period. So it's an interesting phenomenon that we've not experienced before, and everybody quite honestly is going, well, we hope fall 23 is the one where it turns around, that it kind of eases back up.
Have any of those others rebounded since then, of that 50?
What you have is about half that have not rebounded, and about half that I wouldn't call a rebound. They've just been able to stay stable. In other words, it wasn't like they gained a bunch.
They stopped the fall.
They just stayed at 1% growth maybe, versus we've been averaging 4 and 5% growth for years. Yeah. The key point I want to make is the future success and growth of Wichita County really and truly depends upon the skill sets that are in the community. What are the skill sets? Anytime someone, some entity, be it the 4A, 4B, the chamber, whoever, economic development, starts trying to bring in an industry from outside that doesn't already reside here, the first discussion they're going to have is what are the skill sets? What is the workforce? And so the ones that we hear about and know about and do, we're comfortable with. The new ones of the future, we don't know what that's going to be, but we know there's going to be new skill sets needed. And then locally, when people decide to expand their existing business, they're going to need more and possibly new skill sets. My point is, in Texas, the important job of producing those skill sets is embraced by the Texas community colleges. I just came from a meeting in Dallas yesterday, and that's all we talked about was how we're going to produce the workforce of the future, how we're going to produce the workforce of the future, how the 50 of us are going to work in partnership with each other in business and industry, et cetera, to produce that workforce that doesn't exist. And I'll slide off these comments in a minute. You know, I've had these conversations with Wichita County recently because there's a lot of suggestion of activity out at the old cogeneration plant. You know, you've heard about the possibility of a hydrogen generation. Well, what I found out talking to the people that really in the know is that that's just one of many ideals for the people that have partnered and bought that facility out there. And originally, I found out a lot of the rumors I've heard over the years are true, and a lot of stuff that's going on I didn't even know about. I hadn't heard that rumor, hadn't even made the rumor mill yet. But, you know, that facility has many things planned, and what actually comes about in the future, we don't know. Well, my part of that discussion that I made sure the people that own that facility know is Vernon College needs to be in a conversation. I have no idea what the skill sets for someone to work in a hydrogen generation plant are. I don't know. I promise you they don't exist in Wilbar County today.
Sure.
And so developing that training program, working with that business, getting people to enter that training program, exiting with the skill sets is only going to benefit Wilbar County. Well, the same is true for Wichita County. You know, we don't know. A concern I personally have had over the years is all the talk of, and I'm being honest about my concerns as college president. The worst thing a college president can happen to them narrowly is someone say, we want this, and you say, I don't have it, or I don't do it. That's terrible. You don't want to say that. Well, there's a lot of talk about aviation-related industries. There is no aviation training programs in this community. So that's going to be one of that keeps on talking about is where's that program going to come from and how we're going to set it up and what's it going to cost to set it up, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, Vernon College, as you well know, we take this role very seriously. We've been here over 30 years, and I want to talk about that later, why was Vernon College over here 30 years ago. We've continued to grow. We've been here over 30 years, and our primary job is to give people opportunity to get training to go into certain jobs in the workforce or affordable entry-level courses so they can get the first, second year under their belt and transfer to the university of their choice. And most of ours transfer to MSU. And the primary reason is because they already live here. They're place-bound. They're not gonna, most of them are married and they have kids and they work here and they're gonna try to go across the street and graduate at MSU. So at the end of the day, when you look at your allied health professionals in the community, we produce a ton of them. When you look at your technical trade people in the community, we've had a lot of them go through our programs and come out on the other side. When you look at your entry-level workers in the community, whatever that entry-level worker is, they probably have some of their coursework trying to get ahead by coming to Vernon College. The great majority of our students, I've already mentioned, are local. We take them, and this was a conversation we just had yesterday among my team. What community colleges do and what Vernon College does, we take people where they're at, and then we help them get to that next spot. They get to decide what that next spot is, but we help them get there, and that's a role we take seriously. So, in summary, I want to say this as we get into the real discussion. Vernon College is not requesting consideration of tax support to subsidize Vernon College. What we're asking is consideration of that support so that Vernon College can do a better job in assisting this community. It is that simple. I think a couple years ago I said this, and I just said to Bill outside, we're what I call in Wichita County, we're what I call a status quo. We're on coast. And a lot of that is because of financial, from the way the state operates, the way tuition fees, as enrollment go down, tuition fee revenue's gone down as well. And so the next time we're asked to step up, or the next thing we need to be doing, I'm gonna give you a couple of examples in a minute, is we're gonna have to have some help. We're not gonna have it in our pockets to do. We're just gonna, either the business industry is gonna have to step up, and what I'm suggesting that other communities have done is look at the branch campus maintenance tax as some way to support and provide those resources. That's my opening presentation. I sent you guys some information, brought you some copies today. The 2 or 3 comments I want to make about what I'm really talking about today is, by Texas code, by Texas law, by Texas statute, one opportunity is called a branch campus maintenance tax. And in counties of less than 150,000 people population, the authority to put that on a ballot rests with you guys. I can't do it, my board can't do it, the WFISD board can't do it. If the commission, and actually it serves us a little better way that this county is 150. If it were over 150,000, there would have to be a petition. Yeah. A petition is what I'm getting at. And what I'm proposing is that you guys give this consideration, and at the end of the day, then this group would say, hey, there's going to be an election, we're going to set that election, and the citizens are going to decide, and then the work for me really begins, because my people and our supporters, our job is like any other election, and that's to get enough people to vote for it, to pass it. And then we get into the business of how the money's spent, who collects the money, and where it goes, and oversight from your group. And the way the system's set up, this is the group that has oversight over that pot of money that's generated by the branch campus maintenance tax. Okay. Last comment before I want to open the door to any questions is I showed you an example, I think 10 other communities where this has already occurred over the years, and not any in the last couple of years, to be honest. And we're approaching it exactly backwards. Those examples are when a community came to the college and said, if you will come to my town, I will pass you a branch campus maintenance tax and help you build a facility and help you get started, because we want that opportunity in our community. Well, we can't change history, but Vernon College moved over here for its own reasons 30 years ago, and we have our own facility, which we purchased in 2004 and still paying for, and renovated in 2011 and 12 and still paying for. And so we're not asking to build a facility. but we are asking for some assistance, or the opportunity for some assistance going forward. So I'll be quiet and answer any questions I might.
I do, Dusty, I've got some questions.
Yes, sir.
When a maintenance tax is implemented, let's say, and the voters of the county who actually should decide whether or not they need to be taxed, but nevertheless, when that is developed, then does that become its own entity as far as, does the county as a whole become a tax district or a tax, or is it always a subsidy of the county?
What it is that, for lack of a better word, that pot of money is monitored and supervised, and the examples I'm aware of from talking with other college presidents who have this situation is they meet with this group on a regular basis and present a budget on an annual basis of how that money is going to be, you know, because in my estimates are a little over $4 million. And so they present a budget of how is that $4 million going to be spent, just like I submit a budget to my elected board on how that part of money is going to be spent, which includes state funding, tuition and fee revenue, and the local taxes out of Wilbar County. And so this group will help us, we will present, this group will help monitor, you know, how we're going to use the tuition and fee revenue here, how we're going to use that pot of tax money, where it's going to go, how it's going to be used. But it's not a separate district, it's just a revenue source to a continuing operation. The hindsight, and of course this is not good for me, but hindsight is other communities, including Wichita Falls or Wichita County, somewhere in the past could have taken the steps to become their own community college district and vote upon themselves a tax, vote upon them, elect a board to run that entity. But this is totally different. And you're talking about who's researched this for 14 years. So the second option, there is one more option, which is not appealing in my opinion, and that is with Wilbarger County Junior College District annex Wichita County into the district. And in that case, and why I think it's less appealing, or one reason why it's less appealing, is the branch maintenance campus tax is capped by law at 5 cents. Wilbarger County taxpayers currently pay 22 cents. And so if you annex the districts, they would come together, you would end up coming up with a tax rate of probably 12, 13, 14%, or 14 cents, yeah. So the 5 cents is good for us, but it's also capped for the local county residents.
But as far as the tax assessor collector would collect those
Yes.
fees and do just like they do for the county, do for a school district,
Yes, sir.
And then-
Perfect question.
who sets the adjustments on that tax? For example, seniors, are they given an abatement, or?
It's the same as the existing tax that we collect in Wilbarger County. It's all the same criteria, including, you know, we start at, if we get to start at 5 cents, well, the second year, that may be 4.6. You know, it's capped at 5, but as your appraised value goes up, your tax rate could go down. But, and you get to generate the same tax levy, it's just like our operations are in Wilbarger County. The senior citizen discounts or homestead exemptions, the guys like me over 65 who get that exemption, all that comes to play the exact same way.
Is business personal property a part of that
Yes,
as well?
Yep, it's the, on the appraised value like the county has or the school district has or what have you.
So Commissioners Court would set the annual rate based upon the budget that's presented to us, like we
Correct. You know,
would.
once it
our
got
own-
started, every year there'd be a budget, we'd estimate what that total levy is gonna be and what that, you guys had to figure out what the effective rate, it used to be called effective rate, but then we would present a budget for that pot of money, yes, sir.
So does it set as a separate tax outside of our tax calculation, or is it?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
it's-
Yes.
it
And
is not
that was
part
a
of our-
concern I've heard previously, and it's a total, it is not part of the Wichita County tax. It is a separate
It's a
standalone
separate,
tax.
like a mud district would
Yes.
be,
Yeah.
or?
Yes,
okay.
yes,
Irrigation
exactly.
But it's
district
ours when
mark
they
is
get a,
like,
when they get their appraisal, it's definitely still ours.
No, well, I get that, no,
Yeah,
yeah, that's,
yeah.
that's
But,
understandable.
my tax is different than yours, Mark, would show the water district, I pay a water district tax.
Yeah.
And it's a separate line item, separate entity altogether, type, you know.
But unlike a mud district, we would be the ones that would be setting the actual yearly rate based upon, well, the
Yeah, we'd have
budget that you
oversight.
present
You
to us.
would, because, you know, the voters initially started it with that vote, and then just like my voters in Wilbur County back in 1970 set a tax rate. And every year since then, it's fluctuated due to the conditions that set tax rates, you know, all those rules that we follow.
So it's subject to the exact same rules
Yes, sir.
that we have in setting the
Yep,
tax rate.
yep, for your county tax, yes, sir.
And that can only, I guess, for whatever reason, it pulled down, of course, it's capped at 5, but do those new legislative rules that have applied to us over time apply to this as well? 3.5% cap on, as it stands today, as far as an increase could go?
Well, to be honest, community colleges were exempt from that one.
Okay.
And so that one, there were two entities, community colleges and somebody else were exempt from that because we struggled with that when that came about.
Okay.
And somehow legislatively, we came out on top where we got exempted. Community colleges and branch campus tax would be exempt from that 3.5.
Okay.
But we have a
Yeah, the
8,
eight.
we're 8%, we're 8%, yes, sir.
And today in Wichita County, over 65, and Lisa, you'll have to help me, we give a exemption
Right.
for over 65. That would still apply in this case too, as far as value?
Not necessarily. This court, before probably I was born, gives a local, I know, put your back in. Gives a local option over 65 exemption. My exploring of this, I don't see an over 65 in Will Barger for the college. Now, I could be wrong, but I looked on the website and did an inquiry, and I don't see that. But this court gives a local option over 65 of $18,000. It's not state mandated.
Does it recognize ag valuation?
Yes,
It would.
yes.
Whatever that value, whatever you set that value at, Lisa, is the value that this tax sees. So if I'm over 65 today and get that exemption, and it knocks my value down to, say, $100,000 on my home because of that exemption, that 5-cent maintenance tax sees that value there and would tax for it.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah, but I don't,
I know,
I don't believe that the exemption, unless there's something done locally, would apply because it's not state mandated. Over 60, the only place in over 65 is state mandated is to a school district.
And I'm gonna go back today and check on ours, because I work with the tax appraisal office on a weekly basis. I've never had any person over 65 complain to me, so I just assumed that they got that exemption from ours, since nobody ever complained.
Yeah, I knew
I'll
it was
double
a
check
local
that.
option.
With the big discussion in the legislature right now dealing with that, that would be an important question.
Well, I was gonna say that it, you know, whatever that number is today is gonna go up
Yeah.
before the session's over.
Who ultimately changes the 5% cap? Is that a legislative deal?
What, oh, the,
5%.
yeah, it's in state law.
So if
In
it's
state law, it's a 5% cap, and, you know, what that means is in our discussion, do we start at 5% or do we start somewhere else?
Right.
And that's what it
But
means.
it can't exceed 5.
It cannot exceed 5,
Probably
period.
the legislature
And that's
would have
5
to-
cents.
Right, and then, what I've run into over the years, including this year, is these, and not picking on the Texas legislature by any means, Judge, but.
Oh, go ahead.
We like.
This specific statute and code is probably no telling how old, and probably not being updated, probably not being revised, and there's been no appetite, because I've asked for it to be updated, I've asked for it to be revised, and there's been no appetite to mess with it, to be honest. And so it exists as it exists, and it's probably been this way for a number of years.
1983.
Okay.
It's been revised since then.
So this was functioning before BRJC came online, basically, I guess is what, when did BRJC start?
No, we started, our first class was '72.
Okay.
So I think we were over here within the first 10 years out at the air base.
Right.
Yeah, from what I understand the history.
But Lisa, basically then, the way I understand it, a penny for us is valued the same as a penny for this district. Roughly, they would equal the same value.
Estimating the tax levy, yes, sir.
You may have answered
Okay.
this earlier, but I was unclear. And I know, I saw here in statute that Weatherford, for example, they have representation then on the Board of Trustees, because the Commissioner's Court appoints a representative on that Board of Trustees. If this were to pass, how would the voters who approved it have direct say over how the money was spent?
Right. Well, that has been a most interesting question the last 8 years among my colleagues and I, which is the other 49 community college presidents. The statute and the code as written does not give representation other than this elected body monitoring, supervising, approving the budget that was presented for that amount of money. As far as representation on the board, the reason why Weatherford College specifically, and they don't all, those examples I gave you, Weatherford College and Blinn College do have representation, and they were standalone bills introduced by standalone senators to get that accomplished. And so that one bill, and how they politically worked it was they didn't apply it to all colleges. They applied it to, that bill only applied to Weatherford College. And it got approved, since all your other senators or state reps said, well, then it's only Weatherford. If that's what they want, that's okay. And so to cause there to be representation on the board, it would have to go through that process. The code as it exists does not provide opportunity. One of the suggestions I've made to them that I, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, is it would help me in Vernon College in our efforts if this statute was revised to where it included an automatic representation. That would, because that's been a sticking point in some conversations I've had in the past with different community members. And so leaning on you guys, I said, well, but you have 4, 5 elected officials who have oversight to this versus just one. So down the road, 2 things would happen. Either would be that we'd continue the 7-person board as existing, or there would be one of the senators introduce the bill and get it passed to give this county representation.
So this court would set the budget for that specific bucket of funds.
The way I would say that is this court would have oversight and approval process for that specific part of the budget. In other words, I've got some, I mean, you can imagine I've worked up how that money might be spent. And so we did a significant 2011, and this one I just throw out because it's the biggest one. We put $8.5 million into the building on Maplewood Street in 2011. And to do that, we purchased a revenue bond. We did not do a tax bond. We did a revenue bond based on the revenues that continue to go down, okay, as enrollment goes down. And so it was a refinancing of an existing bond, so there's a percentage of that existing payment that applies only to that facility. And so one legitimate expenditure would be that a percentage of that bond payment every year out of that money. And that'd be one. The other expenditures would be, I've put in some of that, just some very basic expenditures. We, for this for this what specific this operate. Let me back up, said first one thing. I have to be sure no Wilbarger County money that comes from taxpayers is spent outside of Wilbarger County. I can't spend it in Wichita Falls. Okay. Vice versa. Any of that money produced in Wichita County, I'd have to validate and show how that money is only spent for the operations in Wichita County. So you get into some basic things like bond payments, utilities, maintenance, overhead, parking lots, blah, blah, blah. That's the easy stuff. And then you get into expanding a nursing program. Expanding a nursing program, you're going to hire 3 more faculty, you're going to have additional lab facilities, and so, you know, you're already up to $300,000 just talking about it, you know. So that would be a legitimate expenditure. Another thing we do, and it is legitimate, other colleges do, is and you guys do it as well. You reserve some of those funds for future large expenses. Like if, I said I was going to mention later, but I'll do it right now. 2 programs that are needed in this town that we can't do, and we've been approached to do both of them, and we're in conversations about how to do both of them, but it's all about the money. And one is a diesel mechanic program.
Amen.
And the other is the automotive service technician program. You're talking about facilities, equipment, instructors, trucks,
Yeah.
motors, simulators. You know, you knock out a couple $1 million pretty fast in that business.
And we know some guys that's got the space that.
Yes, space. You know, we're right now, what's the company that does, only because we've been in some brief discussion with them, Peterbilt and locally. You know, they're very interested. A couple of years ago, we had a discussion with several mobile places and you know, auto service technicians. Well, we have a little program in Vernon that produces about 15 technicians a year, and about half of them go to home and go to work on their own. The other half are looking for a job. That's 7 or 8. That's not filling the void. And they may not want it, and they may be coming from west of us. They don't want to come east. And so auto service technician program is a program that the reason I like it, and you guys know I've been doing this forever, the reason I like it is all your curriculum's set by the industry. All you got to do is say, yes, we'll do it, and you find somebody smart enough to do it. How much you're going to do of this topic and this topic and this topic is set by industry, and so I like those kind of programs.
Now, Dusty, is that money then, when you talk about paying those revenue bonds, is 5 cents seen as so much M&O and so much INS? Is it always going to be done that way? Is it always considered just a single tax?
It's always considered a single tax, and then Vernon College specifically, different from some other colleges in the state, has always operated without an M&O. I mean, with only an M&O. Never had an interest in sinking from day one, and you know, I don't know that that's where it'll always be, but we've been fortunate.
For the longest time.
Yeah.
We've only had one for the last 5 years
yeah.
or so.
Yeah, we've been, the college itself has a history of no interest in sinking. No, there's been never an additional bond election to build another building or anything like that.
Dusty,
Yes, sir.
yeah, some of that fund then could go to tuition reduction.
Well,
It's similar to Wilbarger County.
Yeah, the two biggest carrots that I put in there in your folder is, by law, we have to reduce the tuition to the exact same cost as the in-district tuition in Wilbarger County. And currently, that's a $40 per semester credit hour difference. So a student who's taking 15 hours, which is hopefully they are trying to get through, that's $600 a semester that gets knocked off right then. It is, and when I said, you know, the resources to help the community, well, one of the ways that tax money is going to do is, I mean, just the fact that we passed it, it automatically reduces that tuition. Or I should know, we don't have a choice. That's part of the law, is that you reduce that tuition. The second one is, to me, the second carrot is we do extensive amount of dual credit in the high schools in Wichita County. Each high school pays for that in a different way. Some of them pay more of the students' costs than others. And then the Vernon College Foundation actually partners with all these high schools and provides money to help pay that tuition. Well, this pot of money could help pay that tuition for dual credit. Now, why pick on dual credit? Well, or why give them a deal? Well, it's the growing trend in the United States, it's the growing trend in Texas, it's a growing trend for Vernon College, it's more and more high schools. We just came from a conference yesterday, the data was disaggregated, and a student who comes to college with 12 hours of dual credit, not just a little bit, but has twice the percent of chance of ever completing college as a student who doesn't enter with dual credit.
It's a good.
It's a great program, and it's that simple. And, you know, they're twice as likely to ever complete college as the one who came in that didn't have any dual credit. And the state, in what's called House Bill 8 that passed the House this week,
I was about to ask you about that.
yeah, it's passed the House, it had only one dissenting vote. And in that bill is a pot of money to provide dual credit for economically disadvantaged students defined as those who are on free and reduced lunch. Because right now, we charge, not every college in Texas charges, they subsidize dual credit with their local tax money, to be honest. And so the whole point of that bill is giving that opportunity to those students who are considered economically disadvantaged versus, and I'm not saying all of ours don't go, because some of them suck it up and figure out how to way to pay it. Our foundation helps pay for it. Their high school helps pay for part of it. But just reduce all of that, starting 6 years ago, thinking in terms of down the road, we subsidize 100% of dual credit in Wilbar County. Harold, Northside, and Vernon, they pay zero for dual credit. And the good news, there's a good news, bad news. The good news is we have students getting 24 to 30 hours of college credit while they're in high school. The bad news is they skip right past us and go to university. They don't come their second year with us like we wish they would, but it's their choice.
What that saves
Oh,
those
yeah.
families.
Oh, the high school superintendent,
I just had one to do it. I mean, I know.
oh, you know, okay. Well, the
I
high
just-
school superintendent who, the recent one, he left last spring, or last summer. He had a son come through there and do all 60 hours. I mean, he worked his schedule, he advised him, and he got 60 hours of college while he was in high school. Or his wasn't quite sick, he didn't have to graduate. The assistant superintendent's daughter actually graduated from us the week before she graduated high school. And all the 60 of those hours were at zero cost. You know, a book cost here or a lab fee there, but other than that, it was.
Wow.
And he bragged on us all the time because of
Yeah,
that.
we have this discussion about lowering the cost of higher education,
Yeah.
all these Band-Aid deals that we throw at it.
Yeah.
There's the obvious
Yeah,
answer. or one of them right
and there
there.
are a number of colleges in Texas that already use their tax money to offer zero cost dual credit, and of course their dual credit's exploded over the years. And if this HB 8 passes, there'll be a whole nother pot of money aimed at economic disadvantaged students. And our job will be to get it in their hands, make sure they know about it.
I've watched several people go through that I've known in the community. And what you'll find is the people that are going through that, they're the performers.
Yeah, well, they are, and then, you know, quite honestly, in this business though, the big part about HB 8 is a lot of students just can't. And we want to open the door to that group of students to where they can get into dual credit, and who knows how that end up 3, 4, 5 years down the
Yeah,
road.
we're leaving some things on the table by
Yep.
not
Yep.
having that label.
That's right.
It's a great program. I
So-
watch a lot of people do well. with it.
60 is right now like the top mark. I know my daughter had like 35 or so.
60, most, by other state laws that have come in the last 6 years, nearly every 2-year degree is a 60-hour degree. Okay. And then there are a handful of colleges that really push what they call early associate, get your associate degree at the same time you get your high school diploma. We don't push it, we provide it. We have a lot of kids getting 12, 18, 24, 30 hours, and that's about it. But we do have 1 or 2 a year that has the right parental assistance and gets that 60 hours and graduates. For example, assistant superintendent, her daughter graduated 1 week with us and the next week from high school.
Wow.
But we don't push that as
Right.
much as some other schools do.
I think one of y'all asked a question, just doing some back of the agenda math
Yeah,
here.
you bet, you bet.
it looks like it'd be about $900,000 just to get the reduction from 100 hours, or $100 an hour to $60 an hour. That's based on 2/3 of the census being in Wichita County and lowering it, and $600 a semester. So it's actually gonna be double that.
Based on last 3 years, average of last 3 years enrollment, it'd be right at $1 million. You're correct. So you said 900 something, yeah,
Per semester or per year?
per year,
Okay.
per year.
So that, and then if this were to result in an increased, in more students coming, which it probably would if it's cheaper, I think that's just
Right.
basic economics.
Right,
Then you're looking at kind of $1 million and then growing over time just off the bat of, would be strictly used to get that tuition.
right. And basically, to say it more bluntly than because you're too nice, to say it more bluntly, is we're looking at, instead of Vernon College just subsidizing that, the taxpayers' money would subsidize that. Instead of Vernon College losing that $40 worth of revenue to make other things work, it gets that revenue from another source.
Okay.
Yeah,
So 1 cent of the tax rate would be used to offset
yeah,
tuition cost.
for the citizens, yes, sir.
As a start, and it would probably
Yeah.
get bigger
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah. Well, to your point, you would think that would be an enticement
Right.
for
Yeah,
people
that's-
to say, hey, I'm getting a more affordable deal here than they used to, so I'm gonna come to college now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On HB8, Dusty, I was reading at it and then looking at the fiscal note and the other stuff associated with it. And it looked like the smallest college, I think, was Wharton, would see us, based on what the legislature's doing, a $700,000 a year increase in state funding, all the way up to $33 million for Alamo. Did y'all see what it looked like, how y'all would benefit from that state money?
That came out, those runs, as you know them, only came out last Friday.
Okay.
We had a hour and a half Zoom on this past Monday to try to explain those runs to 50 college presidents who were scratching their head. Because it looks so differently. And what y'all don't know, or may not know, is that the formula that exists for community college funding is over 50 years old. HB8 changes all of that and creates a new funding formula from now on, and it's totally different. So we're all grasping with how does that work. But so the fact that it's more based on performance and outcomes, those that are ahead of the game on performance outcomes, which we're one of them, we benefit a little more than those that are a little bit behind. What's tricky about the numbers, or why we, college presidents, myself, are asking for more clarification of the numbers, is in those numbers are a lot of new money for dual credit, which doesn't pay one light bill. It's money for dual credit.
Mhm.
And the money for a state scholarship program called TIOG. And that pot of money goes straight through us, straight to students, so it doesn't pay light bills either. So we're unclear as of Monday afternoon how much of that money is operational money. And it appears to me that we're going to increase probably right at $1 million per year. That's but that's a guess,
Sure.
just looking at how everybody else stacks up against everybody. And why I've asked, you'll really understand this, why I've asked my association and the coordinating board for more clarification, as have other presidents, is it looks off the bat that my college gets 58% more money, but it appears that very little of that's actually for operations. It's for dual credit, subsidizing dual credit, and the TIOG awards on a yearly basis, which it doubled our Texas Educational Opportunity Grant, is TIOG. It doubled the amount we are allotted, which is wonderful for our students because it all goes straight to the students.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's never been part of the appropriation before. And so adding it to the appropriation kind of made people scratch their head.
Okay.
I'm supportive, just to make sure, because I've gone around on my board and all over the state, I'm supportive of HB8 for one primary reason, because it does a lot of stuff. Any conversation that gets the legislature talking about a new $650 million bump, Vernon College is going to benefit somehow.
Yeah.
And based on the old formula, we would never have that conversation. We would argue over 40 million and 50 million. And day one, this created a conversation around $650 million new dollars.
Well, if it's rewarding those better performance.
It's all about
measures,
performance,
and Vernon
yeah.
College is
Yeah,
one of the better performers, then-
you know, we went through some data yesterday at that conference, and on nearly every piece of data, we're 0.5 or 1% above state average. Well, that's good. Some of those numbers still aren't very pleasant to me when you talk about completion and transfer and disaggregated into ethnicities and what have you. But we're always above state average. Well, not very satisfying, other than in this case, it will produce more dollars.
Okay.
Yeah.
One other question.
Yep.
Because I know the population under 150, the Commissioner's Court it can also be petitioned, correct?
I don't know that.
Okay.
I'm not saying no, I'm just saying I haven't read it that direction.
I think it can, based
Okay.
on looking at it.
Yeah.
To your knowledge, has voters in Wichita County ever brought a petition
No.
to institute this? Okay.
No. No. And I'll go back to my comment about in the other examples, it's been a case of where other college examples, it's been the opposite of us. It's been, we don't have anything. Would you guys please move the operation to our community, and then we get it passed. And most of those, some of those are over 150,000, so I hadn't even thought about that. Some of those had to go through a petition process. Yeah. I had one more, made me think of one more thing I want to be sure to say before we closed up. Never mind, I forgot.
I'll ask you one more question.
Okay, yeah.
The steering committee that was put together for looking at the
Yeah.
branch campus maintenance tax, do they exist outside of that specific project? Is there a steering committee to help tie Wichita County industry and the needs of Wichita County together with the Board of Trustees and try that?
Back in the day, there was a Wichita County Advisory Committee, and it pretty much just dissolved over time due to it wasn't used very often, and then people moved, passed on, things like that. This committee was put together by me of people that I knew were supportive based on previous conversations, and also the fact that, as you saw, most of them had key roles in the community, and therefore they don't. But that there's nothing that keeps us from having a more proactive citizen group. There's nothing that keeps us from having that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dusty, do y'all teach a course out there on rain dancing?
No,
I might sign up.
we were talking just yesterday with a bunch of old college presidents like myself, that we were talking about how you don't ever, it's a whole nother story, but you asked that interesting course. He was talking about a course. We don't ever take anything off our inventory because you never know when, you may not have taught it in 10 years, but you might need it. And he has a course.
It kind of recircles.
Yeah.
Pretty regular lately, as a matter of fact.
He's got an old course on his inventory in his ranch management program called How to Safely Use Cyanide to Kill Coyotes.
Wow.
He said, we haven't taught in a while. But,
How about hogs?
yeah, that's
Or
right.
gophers.
We might have
He said, but I'm not taking it off our list because we may need it one day.
We may need it one day.
Yeah.
Well, Dusty, I've got another question.
Yes, sir.
Vernon today, like the Maplewood campus that you own, is Vernon a taxpayer? Or are they exempt from ad valorem taxes?
No, we're exempt as a college. We don't pay taxes.
Okay.
No, that's right. And then so, but where I thought you were headed on that is that, you know, how do we pay for that building? And we pay it from what we call the revenue bonds, and then we pay that bond by the revenue, and our revenue is tuition fees in Wichita County. Wichita County, that's our only revenue. And then associated state funding comes with that enrollment as well. So between those two revenue sources, mainly tuition fees, we make that. That's how we designate money to that bond payment.
Everything happening in Wichita County, in other words, is funded by Wichita County tuition fees
yeah.
or the state.
Yeah, when I've been a little more aggressive in some circles, I've learned in old age not to be so aggressive, is that basically your students are subsidizing this operation.
Well,
out of their pockets.
they're paying for it.
Yeah, they're
I mean,
paying, they're paying.
They're paying for a service.
They're paying for their services, that's exactly right. They're paying out of their, and most of them, some odd percent are on some level of financial aid or scholarship, so that helps. I remember what I was gonna say is when I said earlier about the first of several conversations, there's some interesting nuances in that code that I've asked the coordinating board to give, to get their legal counsel to give me some clarification. I mean, it seems clear, but it presents some interesting nuances. And that piece of that prior nuance is from the, after discussion, if there's ever going to be an order of election, that has to have, by code, you cannot have election less than 20 days or more than 60 days from that election, that order, which is an interesting law to me. That's the one I've asked for clarification, because I've read as I studied this, I read in some other election law that you had to have a minimum of 62 days of notice. Well, that conflicts. So I've asked for clarification on that. But 60 days or 62 days doesn't give us much time to do a campaign. We can do things, promoting, marketing us, but as far as specific to the campaign. So timing of this will be, I'm assuming they're gonna say 60 days is the most. So we're looking at a September 11th, looking at you guys' calendar, you're looking at not setting the order of election before September 11th to meet that interesting nuance of that code.
I'd be interested to hear what you found out, because it also says in the case of joint school district or joint county elections, by mutual agreement of the governing bodies, the elections shall be held on the same date throughout the jurisdictions.
Yeah, and
I read that as saying, as long as everyone's okay with it, it could be longer than 60 days, but.
Right. And of course, what I'm looking, when I say September 11th, I'm looking at the November 7th,
Yeah,
Tuesday,
right, to
November
make it on
7th,
the-
election, that everybody, we don't want to pay for an extra election, we just want to pay our part of the election.
Dusty, and you may have commented on this when we spoke earlier, last time you spoke to us, but I was under the impression that there was a benefit to be at a bigger election.
Well, there was a lot of discussion of, there's, depending on which consultant you talk to, is it better to be under the radar or in the mix? That's the way I would say it. Are you trying to come in where there's probably going to be a low voter turnout and hope for the best that you get enough votes? Or do you connect with a bigger, more, in other words, May or November is what you really get a choice of. And, some of the past November elections have been a little, we want to stay out of the way. Fall of 23, to my knowledge, is a nominal elections here, there, and yon. There's not really any national elections going on. There's not any state,
Just constitutional amendments.
constitutional amendments and things like that. So that appeared to be the more calm time. And it's a big game. I shouldn't use the word game, but it is. And, what I've said to my counterparts in the community is, when's our turn? Because between the county, the city, and the WFSD, they had a pretty good rotation going there for 10 years or so. Every 3 years, it became somebody's turn to go for a bond or go out for something. And so, it became obvious to me that if we were going to ever get a turn, I had to be more proactive to get a turn. Yeah.
And
Just
here
if
you are.
you could answer that question, you wouldn't have to be president of Burnham
I know it.
All you need is a
I know.
telephone.
Well, I've over the years, and in the past few years, I've talked to different consultants, and what if, and
Your services
you know,
would be highly
there's
valued.
there are services, and we'll hire a consultant who comes in, and because if you only have 60 days, you got to really hit the ground running, and I have no, and my board has none, and I have no crystal ball that even if you guys consider this and order an election and we put it on the ballot and we go through all that struggles, I can't predict. I have no idea what the possibilities of it passing. I'll probably try to close my part. When I came on in 2009, in addition to this long job description, that board, which is only one person left on that board, I've been very fortunate to have good board members, very supportive board members, but they asked me to do two things outside the job description. And I thought I could do them. And one was to renovate Century City. And we did that in 2011, 2012, and I'm glad we did, because if we didn't do it then, it was gonna be hard to do it. Yeah, I'm glad we did. And the second one was, could you ever get a branch campus maintenance tax in Wichita County? And so that's why you've seen so much of me all these years, and that's why you continue to see me today, is it's not personal. It's my job to do what's best for Vernon College. It's my job to do what's best for the 66% of students who choose us because we operate in Wichita County down on Maplewood and Skills Training Center. You know, tongue-in-cheek, promise this is a tongue-in-cheek comment, one of the legitimate expenditures of that money is the annual lease for Skills Training Center. You know, that's a legitimate expense that could come out of that pot of money as well. And then what that does, and you have a right to ask these questions, as you have a right to really monitor and supervise that budget, is so as we start using some of this money instead of this money, what are you going to do with this money? And the bottom line is, tell you how old I am. I'm in my 43rd year, and I'm finishing here in a few more years, I promise you. But I've never seen a time in those 43 years where students need more help in so many ways. More services, coaching, academic coaching, tutoring, mental health services that we don't do a good job providing right now. So that money goes into what they call wraparound student services. What can we do that happens to students? Because I don't say anything negative about them. I'm saying this is a group coming through that just needs a lot of help getting through college. Okay.
Dusty, on that, when you spoke about the diesel program,
Yep.
is that something that in an initial stages that you would farm out to somebody like Rush Peterbilt and actually have the class there, or would it be something that you would construct to house at your facility?
I will say that those conversations are less than 3 weeks old, and so all that's out on the table to discuss. I just know that they initiated the conversation. They approached us and said, here's what we got to have. And we said, well, we'll talk with you about how we can do this. And that would be an example of, there's no doubt in my mind that industry would come up with some help, be it facilities or trucks or cash or what have you. It wouldn't be all on us or all on the county.
Right.
They would be a good partner to have. And I don't know this as much, but I think if we ever went to the auto service technician, between all the businesses in this town that are connected, there'd be some assistance and ability to form partnerships. In my business, like yours, in my business, the word partnership has taken a whole new meaning the last 5-6 years.
I would suspect it would be all the above.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
I mean,
yes.
Overwide.
Yeah, and when the day comes that, and I do think, and I want you guys to think this day will come, that there is a aviation-related business that lands here, there's nobody trained yet for that job, then there's gonna be a need to set up shop and put up a program, stand it up as fast as possible. And of course, you want a quality program, so you'll do that. And get good people to teach it, to train in it, and so forth. Yep.
All right.
These are all good questions.
That's the only kind of this court asks.
That's the only kind of this group. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate the time, because I know we're taking some time. And I said this is the first of what I hope is 2 or 3 discussions. After you guys have had time to think about it, we can communicate. Based on law, I'm thinking, by September, we need to have kind of a thought process. And I know, as a guy who works with a public elected board, we don't make decisions outside of these open boardrooms and Open Meetings Act and all that. And so for me, the best I could ask for is that a day comes where at least on your agenda is the motion to consider, and either it's up or down, and then we go from there. Okay,
Dr.
contact me at
Johnson,
any
thank you.
time, guys. Thank you.
Appreciate
Appreciate
your
you.
time.
Good to
See ya.
see you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, man.
Yep.
All right, that takes us to item number 2, which is to review and discuss regular bills. The moment you've all been waiting for.
I know.
Reviewed most of them.
Hey, Corey, I have a question on the AP cash disbursements on the Grayson County. How many people do we have there? There was juvenile expenses, I think.
There would be at Grayson.
They're court ordered.
Yeah, I know. I was just curious how many it was. How many juveniles?
Where are you finding that?
On the AP cash disbursements on,
Can y'all hear me?
yeah,
Let me look for you real quick. That's what I'm looking.
TJ.
There's only 3, I think, 2 or 3. I can't remember the exact vendor. But I'll find it right here.
$32,000. I just wondered how many of
Yeah,
that.
it's usually about like $260 a day or something to take care of those kids. No, that one has more. Yeah, that one has 3 kids.
3 kids.
3 kids, and I'm gonna double check the amount per day for you.
That's
Okay,
well.
those are $197.69 a day.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's exactly why we need good parents and good families. That
I'll
is,
second that.
that right
Is that a
there is
motion?
just, my goodness.
Corey, are you able to see the current budget for the jail? What did this court approve that budget to be for 561?
Can you hand me the sheet, the department's sheet? I think there's 2 of them over there because I moved one.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good. I did it. Thank you.
Quit throwing your stuff over here.
So,
You work with a bunch of smart alecks.
Well, looks like the actual or original budget was 16,398, 320.
16,398,
320.
320.
Yes, sir.
This came up, I heard it on Henrietta's, watching their council, and I was using the wrong number. I think I used 14, but I was just, and the number is kind of a guesstimate according to the amount of people that we hold and what is our true daily balance, and that would be annual. But if I took that and I divided that by 550, will we run that pretty regular right now, a day?
No, we're running 450-ish, I think, right now, and have been for a while, if I
Okay.
remember correctly.
So that's gonna be, that day value is $99 a day. They were talking about contracting services and paying services, and they thought that the going rate was $55. And that was the math I did in my head just to see that. So if we use that number and we base it on 450, that's $99 a day.
This came up when I was doing some work in my previous job. That $55 a day, I think, was pretty accurate even 4 or 5 years ago. Numbers we were looking at, let's just say, folks, was between 70 and 80. But it wouldn't
U.S.
surprise me if
Marshal,
it
I
was
think
higher.
the U.S. Marshal rate is now, I mean, our new rate that we can get a new updated contract is about 76, somewhere in that neighborhood. But, I mean, truthfully, this is the cost.
Yeah.
And,
It makes you wonder how much of that $76 business you want, if it's.
well, that's the whole deal. Or how much $55 business do you want, you know, so.
You can't make it up on volume.
No, you're not gaining, you're losing. So that was it just hit me because it's been a little bit since we spoke about it, and
That 16 million though that's the sheriff's office total, or is that
That's
just the
just
jail?
jail.
Oh, that's just the
It's just
jail.
561. Right, that's just 561, Corey?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, at 550, Jeff, I think it's about 84 a day.
So, I mean, that gives you a good idea of where we need to be. Like what Mickey was saying, what we're paying somebody else, you know, that's a whole different level as well with medical, and counseling connected, where we don't have that expense.
Lynn, that name I was trying to think of is George Graham. Yeah, that's the one I knew. I started texting somebody to ask him and it came to me. It's amazing how that happens, but, yeah.
I see, the Hobart Corporation here, we've got an expense for steam kettle repairs and maintenance. Y'all help me with I thought some of that we farmed out to Aramark.
We bought one and Aeromark gave us one. So I don't remember if it's a steam kettle and that we bought. Apparently so. There was two appliances, a steam kettle and a tilt skillet, yeah.
But,
And
but if it's ours, I mean, we wouldn't have one 2 years old, would we?
Well, we moved
we,
some of that stuff.
we moved
One from here?
one of the larger appliances from here. And I don't remember which one it is. It had to be disassembled and reassembled to get inside, so.
It's just a really fancy tea kettle, right?
It's basically a giant boiling pot.
Yeah.
Not exactly.
I'm good to be.
Everything good? Y'all still looking fine?
I started looking when he was talking. Just looking.
What is that radio at 35,000? Motorola?
That's that agreement, that maintenance agreement that we signed off on.
Oh, that's not.
about 4
Okay.
weeks ago, yeah.
Yeah, I got you. I remember talking about it, and I couldn't remember if that was that's a maintenance deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
It took a little longer to show up because we had to do some back and forth with them on the contract before we were ready to sign it.
Yeah. It just jumped out.
We had an invoice here, and I think Nancy helped Debbie, and they got to got the information. We think that it's erroneously billed to us from Stewart and Stevens. Maybe it belonged to the city of Electra. We didn't have that, but in the process, there were, and Judge, I'll send this to you as well. I saw in those agenda where we took action in June to try to implement something, maintenance generator wise, but also there was the economic development plan we approved in June of last year. That caught my eye when I was looking at where this came from. We weren't ever able to get the Stewart Stevenson deal done because they had staff issues, but
All good?
Yeah.
I'm good.
All good? Okay. All right. Then, at this point, let's move on to item number 3, which is we are going to head downstairs as a court to tour the new offices on the first floor of the courthouse. Melvin, do I need to recess us for that, or just leave it open until we get back and then close it?
I think you could leave it open until you get back, but you obviously,
Take the recording.
okay, yeah, you can't, yeah, as long as everybody's, no discussion of anything else.
Just-
Yeah.
Keep in mind, they're doing the punch list right now, we'll call it a pre-punch list. It's not a final punch list because we're not complete with everything. But we're complete enough to get the offices moved in and start functioning next week, so.
Okay.
Keep that in mind, that nothing's been punched and
All right, well, let's do it.
it's in the process.
Can the media accompany?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a posted item for the public.
Do we have a little tram to ride down there?
We are taking stairs.
I'm pushing around all these chairs.
I think I'll just stay here, if that's okay.
You don't want to look at it?
Well, it's not that I don't want to, it's not to go all the way around.
the real country.
No, I don't have a clue.
Where are we?
That vision doesn't make sense.
I thought we had moved past that, and then here it comes again. I just, why that jumped out at me,
Yeah.
which is why I'm driving to Dallas to go up and look at that one day.
Oh, I have not talked to her.
Yeah. I've got a bunch of those posts if we decide to have it work. No.
You good?
Yes.
All right, anyone have any questions now that we're back from the tour or comments?
No, sir.
Okay. Oh, good.
Just got a ways to go still. I know it's not completely finished, but considering the amount of work that was done in the last 2 weeks,
The timeline moved up.
yeah, they did a lot in the last 2 weeks to get ready to at least be able to inhabit the offices and still have some stuff left to do.
Yeah.
As you can see, it's not 100%, but yeah,
And you
it's
think
there.
they're gonna start, did my one on 3, Monday?
Monday or Tuesday. So I've got asbestos guys coming next week. We gotta be ready.
Yeah. Okay. Good deal. Thank you. All right, then it's 11:47 and this meeting's adjourned.